Listen, it's not about creating a far leftist culture. It's about creating a neoliberal pro-establishment culture. So I saw Twitter is finally getting a new CEO. How much that changes things is I don't really see much. Because a lot of times the CEO is just a figurehead. They don't really oversee what's actually going on. And I'm seeing a lot of reactions, mostly negative, because I see a lot of like the shit lib types don't really care for now, because, you know, they're the ones who aren't going to be affected by this. And I specifically am talking about the neoliberals, because guess what? What's like the socialist populists and the anti-war left, they're going to get yeeted too. It's not the right. They go after them because it's not about a far leftist culture. It's about a neoliberal culture, and they are different. Now, I'm going to say, in terms of like the bannings that are going to come, which they will come, I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight because I don't use any social media unless you count YouTube, because social media is trash. I mean, I don't get why people like it if you're on Twitter other than like for art and stuff. Because I'm like, why would you want to go on Twitter where everyone's just angry and just always insulting each other and just like being vile and disgusting for no reason? Like, that sounds like a cesspool, and I'm like, no wonder people who are avid Twitter users are so unhappy. Like, why would you want to get caught up in that? But Twitter does heavily influence culture and politics, so I guess it does matter. Now, I've been looking into this guy. I'm going to show you what Twitter's saying themselves, how the left represents this, and how the right represents this. And to be objective, the right is doing a better job at this. However, you see a lot of people on the right now, I think incorrectly, and I can understand where this mistake comes from, saying that this guy is even farther left than Dorsey, and he's going to create a very more far left Twitter. And I'm saying that's not true, because when I look into this guy's statement, I'm not seeing a far leftist, I'm seeing a neoliberal, or a shitlib. Because of the way this guy speaks, I'm like, this is not a progressive. This is not how they speak. And I understand why the right thinks they might be far leftist, because neoliberals and shitlibs, they like to grab a lot of progressive talking points, and they like to call themselves progressives. But in reality, they just do that to look good, because that's all they care about is looking good. So if the establishment tells them, this is good, they will go, I will also stand for this. And then if they say, now this is good, even if it contradicts the first thing, they will say, now I believe in this. But I still believe in this other thing, because they told me it was good. And they'll switch or contradict, because all I care about is looking good. The example I always give is like the white lady who puts a big BLM sign in front of her house. I'm like, do you think this shows any solidarity with black people, or is it to look good for the white lady across the street to show how progressive they are? Which will then simultaneously support policies that harm black people. I was like, that's how you know that's not a progressive, that's a shitlib who's just trying to look good. And just doing what the establishment tells them to do. So, this guy, total shitlib. I'm reading what he's saying, total shitlib. Very authoritarian, but that's because they are. It's sort of like the neocons and the neolibs. They're basically the same thing. The only difference is rhetoric. The neocons right now are just very upfront, like they don't care. They're very openly corporatist. Whereas like the neolibs are like, yay, we're fighting for you. We don't agree with these things. We must fight. We gotta fight for the working class. Or they'll say, we gotta fight against these wars. And then they vote for all the stuff that helps the elites, and they'll vote for the wars they say they're against. I'm like, yeah, same shit, different packaging. Anyway, if we look at Forbes, so I'm going to show you this frame. It's very dishonest. They leave out a lot of context about what the actual complaints are about this guy taking over. And then we'll look at how we'll look at how Fox Business frames it. I think they frame it way more fairly if I'm being objective. They seem to actually understand the concerns, but I think the problem with the right is they're a bit too short-sighted, thinking they're only going to be going after conservatives. And I'm like, no, they're going to get rid of the socialist populists, and they're going to get rid of the anti-war left. They've been doing that since Obama. That's why I said, it's not, they're neolibs. They don't like that. They want a specific type of pro-establishment, pro-government culture. They will take a left-wing position or a right-wing position. They will switch on a dime. It depends what basically is good for their pocketbook and good for their control. They don't have any principles. Shortly after his name, Twitter's new CEO, Parag Agrawal, I hope I'm saying that right, drew criticism from conservatives Monday as old social media posts and interviews led to some question how Agrawal will handle the censorship, especially of far-right sources on the social media problem. There they go again. This is I've always hated that the left always does this. They conflate right with far right. Those are not the same thing, or even remotely the same thing. The conservatives, I'm being objective and being fair. They don't like the far right. They don't like the ultra traditionalist, ultra nationalist right. They did that in the last article I did, the video where I said Kyle Rittenhouse supports BLM, and the Independent was framing it as the conservatives are mad that he supports BLM and isn't a racist. And I'm like, dude, that's a scummy tactic where they try to slide that in there to try and make those two like the same thing. And usually when I have establishment left refer to far right, they usually just mean populism. Even if it's left-wing populism, they call it far right. Because they're anti-populist. So here's something that conservatives were attacking, which was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Especially, I saw Crowder attacking this. And I love that Crowder specifically got butthurt at this statement. And look, he tweeted, and it was a quote from The Daily Show, "If they are not going to make a distinction between Muslims and extremists, then why should I distinguish between white people and racists?" What is wrong with that statement? He is not calling white people racists. He is saying that is a stupid statement. Pretty much... The quote is, both of those are stupid statements. I have made this exact same point where left-wing media always portrays black people. They pull out the ignorance, right? And try to make it sound like they're speaking for us. And then the right response, I'm like, is this really what the black community is at right now? And I'm like, no, that's not us. I'm always like, I don't conflate all white people with January 6th, do I? Because that would be equivalent of what you're doing. And that's why I loved Crowder was like, hey, fuck you, man, when he saw that quote. And I was like, didn't you go on that racist rant and then went, it's just a joke, bro? When it wasn't really in a joke format, it was more in a statement format. Especially his little friend there going, what was he said? He's like, oh yeah, because white farmers are known for going into the city and ruining them. I'm like, that's not a joke, that's a statement. And then so much is the light criticism of white people, which isn't even a criticism of white people, and he's crying. Oh, that's good. I'm like, dude, don't attack this. That's not an anti-white tweet. That is a statement just saying both of those conflations are dumb, which is a true statement. Okay. Now, some conservative commentators also pointed out that Argwell telling MIT Technology Review in 2020 that Twitter, like other private companies, is not bound by the First Amendment, leading some conservative commentators to speculate Twitter's censorship of right-wing sources will worsen. We already know that's going to happen. Again, but because, like I said, this is a neolib or a shitlib, you can say bye-bye to the populist socialists and the anti-war left as well. The thing is, they're a lot smaller group, so you don't really hear about them much. Now, I'm going to get into that comment, because I'm going to speak about that comment about the First Amendment as a libertarian, and point out where a lot of libertarians get this wrong. Now we're going to go over to the right's way of framing this. So, Fox says in the title that, one said Twitter is not bound by the First Amendment. Okay, here, I just wanted to jump straight to the quote. He said, our role is not to be bound by the First Amendment, but our role is to serve healthy public conversation, and our moves are reflective of things that we believe lead to a healthier public conversation. Now, okay, on the surface, where they said our role is not to be bound by the First Amendment, I'm going to speak as a libertarian. I will genuinely agree with that statement. However, and this is where I think a lot of libertarians get it wrong, and I know they're going to get mad at me, and I know more of the populist left is going to like me for this. Twitter should be a public service, or public good, or public utility. There we go. It should be a public utility. Because Twitter took our tax dollars and used it to build up its company. Facebook did the same thing. At that point, you are not a private company. You're not a private corporation. You are state funded. You can't just cut off their tax dollars and then go, okay, now they're a private company. They've already built so much of their infrastructure on our tax dollars. It should be a public utility, and no one should be able to get yeeted for saying, legal speech. Anybody. I don't care how stupid it is. I don't care how harmful they think it is. Because the phone companies can't do that. So I don't think they should either. Libertarians, stop saying Twitter's a private company and Facebook a private company. They're not private companies. They are funded by us. They are our companies. Now, when we get to the more, some of the worst stuff he said is, Our role, where he goes, but after that, our role is to serve healthy public conversations, and our moves are to reflect things that we believe lead to a healthier public discussion. I would like to know what Twitter thinks a healthy public discussion is, especially on Twitter, which really is the crazy leftist shithole that it is. Let's be honest. Do you think Twitter is going to ban those nasty people that just say, fuck you, you alt-right piece of shit because you posted a picture of your dog because they're mad at something you said 2 months ago or something? I doubt that. But at least that gave a bit more context. Now, here's where we're going to get to the point where I told you I know he's a shit lib and not some far left progressive. Because I went to the private, Twitter's blog about their new privacy policy, which is very interesting, and I'm just going to highlight the best parts for time. Because basically the first part of it is no doxing, which was always already kind of a rule, unless you were CNN. Apparently if you're CNN, you could dox people. That was fine. And certain people, if Twitter didn't like you, they'd allow you to be doxed. But, like I said, I don't think that's going to change. So, we go to the second paragraph. There are growing concerns about the misuse of media and information that is not available elsewhere online as a tool to harass, intimidate, reveal the identities of individuals, sharing personal media such as images, videos, and potentially violate a person's privacy and may lead to emotional or physical harm. I don't get what that means. So what you're saying is, there's one thing about doxing people, but what videos and what images could cause an individual to cause emotional, physical harm? Are you talking cyberbullying? Because let's be honest, are we going to contribute this to cyberbullying or revenge porn? Which, that's one thing. Or more likely, I think they're going to use this to go after journalists. Because like I said, harassment, revenge porn, doxing, already, for the most part, against the rules. So there's really no need to say this. Now, this is where I confirmed this dude is a total shit lib. Alright? Watch this. The misuse of private media can affect everyone, but can have a disproportionate effect on women, activists, dissidents, and members of minority communities. And that is what gives it away. Because guess what? The shit libs love doing this. They love throwing us in the way as their shield. They'll never explain why. They'll just say something and then go, it disproportionately hurts minorities. They'll just throw us in the way, for no fucking reason. And they won't come out with any, evidence of that or anything. Because they always throw that in there. They'll throw on the women and minorities as, a shield to try and make their point. So other shit libs are like, oh, we gotta do this because we gotta protect the minorities. Because guess what? These same people who say we gotta protect the minorities and we don't like things that have disproportionate impacts on minority communities. Does he have any? I'm legitimately asking. Does he have anything on being against vax mandates because they disproportionately hurt black wealth in terms of business? I doubt. This is why I said shit libs are like this. They'll cry all day and night about systemic racism, but they'll do they will gladly hold it up if the establishment tells them to. What was it? I'll quote, what's it called? Because you have the shit libs are usually slacktivists, and I'll quote internet historian that the shit libs were willing to do anything it takes to end systemic racism as long as it didn't involve practical action. So that's the point. They'll throw out the minorities every 5 seconds as they're trying to save us, but then, like I said, 2 seconds later, if the establishment tells them, they'll support policies that will hurt minority communities. They don't give a fuck. Also, the other giveaway that someone's a shit lib is when they use the term POC. That's another one. You gotta watch out for that one. So the problem is now, when we go on, they're turning everything into basically a two-party consent thing. And this is where you go, how do you do any kind of journalism if you have to have, investigative journalism, if you have to have the person maybe you're reporting on who's doing something shady or whatever, if they are not, how do you get them to consent to that? Nobody's going to consent to that. Now, they say, if it's newsworthy, but they don't give any indication on what the term newsworthy means, and that's the problem. But the rules are vague on purpose. It's so they can kind of, do certain things and get away with other things and then not enforce others. It's the same thing with law you have to watch out for. If a law is vague, it's set up for exploitation. But when you go to the second set, this is where it gets weird. So, no threatening to publicly expose someone's private information. So I hope CNN gets banned because they've done that multiple times, and I guarantee you they're going to do it again. So I'd love to see if CNN will be banned from Twitter when they inevitably do this again. And then it goes sharing information that would allow hacking. It's like that's already illegal. Were you not doing this before? It seems like, I'm just speculating that it might be, you know, sometimes they put these things in here to muddy it up, right? Throw in things that are already against the rules and are completely like not disagreeable and mix it in with the things that are disagreeable. So some people have trouble saying this is stupid. Asking for or offering a bounty or financial reward in exchange for posting someone's personal or private information. Well, I guess Candace is done. We got to get rid of Candace Owens. That was a joke for people who know her past, so chill out. So here's where it gets weird. When we are notified by individuals depicted or by an authorized representative that they did not consent to having their private image or video shared, we will remove it. Okay, so besides the copyright law thing or responding to it, because I'm not sure if they'll necessarily use that. They probably will. I don't know. But when they say this policy is not applicable to public figures or individuals when media and accompanying tweet texts are shared, are in the public interest, or add value to the public discourse. Who decides it adds value to the public discourse? Twitter. Who decides that? I'm going to assume mainstream media, establishment media. I'm assuming that's what they mean. Because I doubt if independent outlets are covering this, they're not going to allow that. I mean, they banned New York Post Hunter Biden thing. If anyone remembers that, they banned that. However, if the purpose of the dissemination of private images of public figures or individuals who are part of public conversation is to harass, intimidate, or use fear to silence them, we may remove the content with our policy against abusive behavior. I really look forward to a lot of people being banned off Twitter if that's the case, especially the shitlibs, since they're the ones who usually do this. The right does this too, but nowhere near the amount the shitlibs on Twitter do this. And here they go into, like I said, we're going to outweigh the risk reward to the person. This is just corporate bullshit speak, but this one is interesting. We will always try to assess the context in which the content is shared, and in such cases, we may allow the images or videos to remain on the service. For instance, we would take into consideration whether the image is publicly available and or being covered by mainstream and traditional media, newspapers, TV channels, online news, or sites. Which means mainstream media gets a pass to do, they can do this shit all they want. I already know that's how it works. They don't get banned. They break the rules all the time on like YouTube, for example. They break the rules all the time, and they're still on the front page every fucking day. And then it goes, or if a particular image and the accompanying tweet adds value to the public discourse, is being shared in the public interest, or is relevant to the community. The Hunter Biden story was in the public interest, so this is why I said, I don't believe you are going to, in good faith, decide what is being shared in the public interest or is relevant. I do not trust you with this. Anyway, I saw this and I was like, yeah, a lot of this looks shady as hell. I think Twitter's going to get worse. I hope that the stock has been going down when they saw that this guy's taken over. I really do hope they just run Twitter into the ground. I'm like, yo, please just could everyone just get off Twitter? Let Twitter die. The only reason Twitter is where it is right now in terms of prominence is because Trump fucked up in not leaving the platform when they were already dying. Trump should have let it die, but he made a terrible fucking decision, and I am mad at him for that. But maybe this will encourage more people, because not that many people relative to the American population are on Twitter, and hopefully will encourage people to, I don't know, go elsewhere and let Twitter just die off. Make it turn into a Tumblr where it's just some weird neoliberal or crazed leftist cesspool. Just let it die like that.